everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show, where we talk about everything except the theme parks. I have a great panel today. My good friends joined me for this gigantic discussion. I'm going to start off with Mr. Family Man. Mr. Family Man, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody at home know where they can find you, sir.
Absolutely. I'm, as I said, I'm Disney Family Man 23. You can find me on YouTube under the Family Man name, not the D23, just Disney Family Man. And also on Twitter at Disney George, and also on Instagram. And I'm also part of the Grand Circle Tour podcast, which you can listen to on iTunes and Stitcher.
Perfect. Scanned them in.
Scanned in.
Gotta scan them in.
And so down below right here, I have Rudio. Welcome back to the channel. Rudio, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. Can't wait to talk about this big discussion that's been on social media for the past 2 weeks. So I'm ready.
Awesome. If you can let the good folks at home know where they can find you on social media.
You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram and on TikTok at Rudio. I do not have D23 info tickets, just like Disney Family Man. He's got all the info. Those Destination D23 tickets, he's got them. Get them up.
He's got them. Scanned in.
Here's the problem. That little noise, we don't know what it's going to be like in the next 2 weeks because we're going to have magic keys. That's another discussion for another day. But
yeah, that's very true. It'll probably be like a key lock or something noise.
Yeah, I figure it's going to be something stupid like that.
Yeah,
I was going for that, but yeah. I guess you make a good point.
And last but certainly not least, Dre Vash Sky, how you doing, my friend?
Doing very well, very well. I'm super glad to be here. Super excited to be here. You can find me at Vash Sky right there on Twitter. Great interactions. Actually, we're going to be highlighting one notable interaction that I got, so that's going to be cool. And for videos, you can find me on your channel, Orange Grove, at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Yes. All right, so big video. We're going to discuss this huge topic that's been dominating the industry and social media, which is
Scarlett Johansson, Disney, battle it out. Yeah. It's gonna be epic. It's gonna be a showdown for the ages.
Battle of the Titans this Sunday.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes, so you heard it right. Today we're talking about the ScarJo lawsuit and all the ramifications. So I want to start off kind of getting a temperature as to where we all stand on this lawsuit, kind of get an overview of what we're looking at here. I'm going to start off with Mr. Vash Sky. What are your feelings on this? What? And from what I understand, you have some details in regards to the lawsuit to kind of set the table.
I do. Pretty simple. She's suing Disney. Well, her loan out company is. That's the device that she uses for talent signing. Literally loans out your labor. There's some tax, asset protection, and other economic advantages to it. It's called Periwinkle Entertainment Inc. is suing Walt Disney Company, and so this is pretty big. This is pretty large right here. We don't usually see this in the industry. She is alleging that because of the day-to-date release of Black Widow, she lost what she is suing for, $50 million. That's the kind of rumor going around. It's 5% of gross, with the expectation that it was going to make maybe $1 billion if it didn't go through a day-and-date release cycle on top of her $20 million pay. So that's kind of how the pay structure works right there. And her contention is simply this, that Disney, put out Black Widow on their premium access service to raise the stock price. And what her contention is that the Disney's CEO and some of their more executive positions are bonused specifically based on what that stock price, what the price that stock price actually is. her contention is that is a disincentive. It disincentivizes them from actually going through a traditional day and date release, and incentivizes them to up some of the Disney's biggest assets or products. In this case, being Disney Plus, specifically premium access. Her contention is that they would have otherwise waited to release this if not for the desire to boost the Disney Plus and their value on the platform in the eyes of Wall Street, which, because of the rising stock price, directly benefits the CEO and CEOs and Disney's corporate leadership. Even though all of these consequences associated with releasing Black Widow day and date were well known, problems with rewatchability, accessibility, piracy, cannibalization, which we will get into, I'm sure, it was worth it to Disney's leadership in order to line their own pockets, with the added bonus of not paying ScarJo herself. Her lawsuit not only seeks transparency regarding the loss in premium access revenue, but it also how much Disney ended up benefiting from this arrangement, as in subscribers gained, subscribers retained, and are they competitive with other services, and which Discovery might reveal. So that's another kind of facet to this. She maintained her contractual obligations concerning promotion. I know that was kind of a thing that you brought up, Rudio. It looks like she did fulfill her contractual obligations on that front. That was in order to place herself in the best position for the suit. Mm-hmm. But the real dynamic kind of playing out here is, well, let's see. As you know, Disney has released multiple films on their streaming platform via this premium access service. And so right after this lawsuit dropped, you're hearing maybe Emma Stone getting involved and maybe somebody else getting involved. And so it's got bigger implications, much larger implications than just the Scarlett Johansson's own lawsuit. Maybe her agent is involved, and maybe her agency is affiliated with some other people in the industry that might be bringing up lawsuits in their own. And so it's a very fascinating discussion that has a lot of tendrils that go back into the history of this issue in the industry. You'll remember, I think it was like 10 years ago, the screenwriter strike. Part of that was because of this very issue, and a lot of those things haven't been resolved. So it's a very fascinating lawsuit.
So this is kind of the industry sort of, they've kind of been, from what you're telling me right now, is they've kind of been kicking the can down the road, and the chickens have come home to roost, so to speak. And now it's kind of a come to Jesus moment, and now they got to really deal with it. It's a very interesting situation. It really surprised me, actually, because obviously these kind of lawsuits are very, very rare. But it surprised me that Disney didn't just kind of make a deal, write her a check, and be done with it. And then even after it went public, they dug their heels in. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've doubled down. They're saying, no, we're right. She's wrong for this. We're right. And the attorney, I think Daniel Petroselli, Vash, is that what his name is?
Petroselli, yeah, I believe that's correct. Let me just get that name here.
Yeah.
What's funny is
Mr. Petroselli,
they released that press statement very soon after the news leaked. Like, usually it takes like a good few days. It happened within the first 24 hours of that news breaking. That
was very interesting how quickly they responded, and it's wild. It's wild. Now, this Daniel Petroselli saying that this is just the other day, he said that no, we're right on this. He basically called it frivolous. He said it was a PR stunt, right? I mean,
sure.
So it's either Disney really has like a strong leg to stand on legally that maybe we're not aware of, or they just, whatever she's asking, they don't want to give it. Maybe Disney fears precedent. Do you think that's a possibility here?
Oh, absolutely, they are. Absolutely do. And there are some trades actually saying that they're updating the updating the language in their contracts for other talent surrounding this issue when it comes to releasing the future films on Disney Plus. So that's interesting. Why would you need to update the language? I thought this was all hunky dory. Right. Mr. Petroselli is actually saying. He's saying two things. One is the contract is, it's clear, concise, it's binding, it is whatever. The other thing that he's saying is that usually these things would be taken up in arbitration. In fact, there is a clause within all these contracts saying that you can't just go into open court. You have to arbitrate beforehand, which then becomes a closed kind of court situation where you have an arbiter and they can make decisions as to as to damages, losses, throw it out entirely, that kind of thing, which would definitely change the game. Now, from ScarJo's camp, they're saying no. That kind of contract would be with Marvel itself, but Marvel couldn't fulfill a contract like this. It was on Disney, who controls distribution and who controls this aspect of this contract. So that's why they're saying that no, it doesn't belong in arbitration. And honestly, look, guys, you can say one way or another. Obviously we don't know the entire language of the contract, but she's saying she's got an email. And the email says this: we totally understand Scarlett's willingness to do the film, and her whole deal is based on the premise that the film would be widely theatrically released like our other pictures. We understand that should the plan change, we would need to discuss this with you and come to an understanding, as the deal is based on a series of very large box office bonuses. So they even say, ScarJo's team, they came out right at, I think, 2019 and asked for assurances that this was gonna play in a normal traditional industry standard window in the theaters, because a lot of what they were saying was, we want to minimize that window. We do want to do day and date at some point, and they were saying, wait a minute. If you do this, our bonuses are contingent on this release, and any day and date release might cannibalize box office earnings. We have to renegotiate this contract. Apparently, those negotiations went all the way to March and then stopped. And with this email, it puts them on a pretty good foot here.
But let me ask you this, and then I'm going to go to George. There were some news today, and this is kind of breaking. So I'm going to throw it out there and kind of see what you think, because they do talk. The ScarJo camp does talk a lot about cannibalization with this day and date release, and we're going to discuss day and date release more thoroughly later on in this discussion.
Sure.
But there was this. This is from Deadline,
mm-hmm.
And Jungle Cruise had a better than expected second weekend, and really a decline of just 55%, which is really kind of normal for a lot of, even without the day and date, even pre-pandemic, 55% is not out of the realm of possible. It's pretty kind of standard. Does that kind of take a little bit of the wind out of the sails for this argument that the day and date's cannibalizing when you have this other movie that doesn't seem to be the case? Maybe it's a Black Widow problem.
I would say, go ahead.
No, sorry. That's actually what I was going to get to, because if you really think about the film itself of Black Widow, out of all the movies that was supposed to be released in theaters, this is the one movie that kept on getting delayed. And we kept on getting a release date within theaters of saying, okay, it's going to be released this day. And then it gets pushed back even more to this day, to this day. I mean, even with me working at Hallmark, last Christmas, we had the Black Widow ornament, because every time an ornament comes out, it's to promote the new movie that is released that year. So we got an ornament out that no one even bought. We had shelves of the black ornament stacked on the shelves because no one bought it, because there was no way of knowing when the movie was going to be released. It didn't promote nothing. So now it just boils down to the fact of, after the fact, they finally got the film up and running. From that point, it just seems like, and I'm only speaking for Scarlett at this point, it's like, it feels like, to me, she can't win. It's right. Like the film got pushed back, but also at the same note with Disney, again, they're a business. I don't know exactly what was specific in the contract itself of what was like highlighted but based on what Vash mentioned in the email, to me, it's sort of like a he said, she said type of deal, because even Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said, I'm sticking to the contract. I'm not pushing forward. I'm standing by Disney. So for him to say that, are are different celebrities receiving different emails from Disney.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, they were. If they were able to work something out with him, that's interesting.
Rudy, go ahead, Rudy. I
go
know
ahead,
he's
Rudy.
like dying
Yeah.
to say something right now.
Go ahead, Rudy.
Well, I just wanted to say the compare and contrast between the Jungle Cruise and Black Widow. I mean, you figure they're two different type of movies. There's an entry point where you can just have gone on the ride Jungle Cruise within the last 20 years and still have an affection towards that ride. Plus, you have the star power of The Rock and Emily Blunt, both probably some of Hollywood's charming actors and actresses in the industry right now. No matter what vehicle The Rock is in, The Rock is going to generate dollars. It's not so much skyscraper, but if you throw him into a Disney movie, people are going to go out and watch it. The problem with Black Widow was it was a prequel that we already knew the outcome of the character 2 years prior to this movie even being released.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're struggling with Black Widow, it's a little bit of, I want to say, us knowing what happened to the character, and maybe a little bit of people kind of, not to say that Marvel's momentum is dying, but maybe people weren't interested in going back and watching a character that they already knew.
Character, I agree with you with that. I think with that specific character, I think that's where it was kind of a Russian roulette, because if you actually look at the domestic box office right now, it made almost $172 million. For me, with a prequel, I mean, you kind of tie that with the Ant-Man films. To me, that's pretty standard. I can't foresee Black Widow making over $300 million like the Avenger film.
Mm-hmm.
No. Well, and George, yeah, and Rudy, you guys make a good point. Where, and also, I feel like this movie is a few years. It's a few years too late. I think that
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like we're becoming further and further removed from those core Avenger characters. Captain America, Chris Evans, Captain America, the Hulk, Black Widow, what have you. And we're entering a new phase, a multiverse now with the Marvel stuff. And it's just kind of like now we're going back in time and kind of revisiting, Black Widow. It just kind of feels like, okay, I think the fandom is sort of ready for this new exciting era of the multiverse and kind of over the the Marvel stuff from 6-7 years ago. Vash, you were going to say something about the Jungle Cruise numbers in comparison to the Cannibalization and Black Widow. What are your thoughts on that?
Couple things. One, The Rock saying something that might actually have to do with his precise pay structure. I don't think he gets back end profits. I think he is flat fee, which is why he might lean in the direction of saying a comment like that. Whereas people who who have their contracts structured for back end release and bonuses and stuff like that, they might have maybe a different opinion. So I'll push back on that just a little bit. When it comes to this film specifically, I will agree that this film really should have been placed where Captain Marvel came out. Because
I would even say maybe 2017. Because,
sure.
Yeah, because spoiler, if you haven't watched the movie takes place very soon after Civil War. So if you were to place that film maybe right around the time Guardians Volume 2, Thor Ragnarok, around that same time frame, I would have been okay with putting that movie out around that time.
Correct. You can make an argument for that, but Captain Marvel. The reason I bring that up is only because, ideally you would like to place that earlier. But as far as peak Black Widow, that should have been the last window for it to be released, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it would have worked out well narratively, where you kind of introduce Black Widow into her own, and then you kind of have that devastating big impact of oh man, she actually sacrificed herself in the end. So I think it would have played well nicely had that been done. And the reason why I kind of bring that up as well is because that conversation that they had with Disney in terms of the contract, the ScarJo team brought up Captain Marvel specifically and how well it did in theaters, and wanting kind of the same result. And I mean, is Captain Marvel a better movie than Black Widow?
I don't
No,
objectively.
but you have to put in the momentum that Marvel had at that time in 2019.
Yeah,
The fact
right
that
after
that was
Infinity War.
right after Infinity War and right before Endgame, like
Yeah.
we were just put it in my veins. Like we wanted something that would give us an inch closer to what Endgame ended up being. But granted, Captain Marvel opinions, like what did you guys think of Captain Marvel at the time?
I thought it was okay. I felt it reminded me, and I'm a huge Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan. I watched the entire show from beginning to end. A lot of fans dropped off on that series. I didn't. I was very loyal to that show. I really enjoyed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Captain Marvel, though, for me, did not feel like a Marvel movie. It felt like a season finale to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., in my opinion. It wasn't bad. It just didn't feel like on par with what used to expecting from the Marvel movies. But George, what were your feelings on Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I actually agree with you. It felt like it was sort of like Marvel throwing a film out to say, okay, we got to put something in this time slot before Endgame. So it's like, what do we put here? Let's make Captain Marvel, you know? So it's like, I enjoyed the movie. Is it compared to all the other films? Is it compared to Ragnarok? Is it compared to the Guardians? I think it kind of falls a little short for me.
I'm
of similar opinion.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Vash, what are your feelings on Captain Marvel?
I'm of similar opinion. You know, I understand why the decisions were made to position that movie where it was and to put it out and stuff like that. But like you said, Roji, it's just not up to the standard of what I consider, you know, peak Marvel. You know, and look, there are okay Marvel films and there are peak Marvel films. Films that are like, even if they weren't part of the MCU, they'd be great films.
Right.
It doesn't belong on the top shelf. You know, that's all I'll say about that. My comments about Jungle Cruise, though, and those percentage drop-offs, yeah, I would expect the percentages to be close to accurate because the percentages is not quite the full story. It's the equation. The equation's been changed, so the percentages would, I think, follow that no matter what. So that's kind of why, you know, it's just when you look at Jungle Cruise, when you look at, you know, Black Widow, like these films are so expensive to produce. They're so expensive to make. And what the Disney company, I think, is doing. And well, look, also to the, you know, big kind of elephant in the room here is the worldwide situation, how that changes release and how that changes, you know, distribution models and so forth. But I mean, I'll just contend with this. A couple months later, we're going to have Shang-Chi, and that's going to get an exclusive 45-day release window. I mean, Black Widow could have gotten that. And not only that, but, you know, the other thing, too, is that it wasn't released in China, which is going to severely damper its box office performance, especially when, you know, piracy exists and how they can get good copies and so forth. That's going to really hurt it. And then lastly, I'll say it's really hard to argue that Scarlett Johansson shouldn't have gotten an update to her contract simply because, you know, Warner Brothers across the street over there is giving out, is renegotiating contracts because they announced really early on their 2021 film slate was going to be on HBO Max as well as theaters. And so that came with some renegotiations. In one certain instance, Gal Gadot for 1984, which, you know, let's be honest, wasn't really the best movie. She got a big payout because of that, because her contract was tied to theatrical release. And so to bring it back to the lawsuit, I think she's got a very ironclad case here. She's got emails confirming that they recognize that they need to update these contracts. You have industry practices going on, fulfilling or refulfilling these contracts, within the industry. This is going to be a tough one for Disney to pull off here.
Yeah, it will. It will. I mean, I think you're right. I think that it's going to be a hard one. It is. And that's why I said earlier in the conversation, I'm very surprised by the kind of doubling down, digging the heels in. That's
where I could see, like, on both ends, where I can understand on Disney's position where because of what happened worldwide, they couldn't do anything right then and there. But at the same time, it's how Disney responded, because it wasn't fair on her end, and of how they responded. I'm not used to Disney respond. And you would have to think that these people, yes, it's in the black and white contract, but this contract was made prior to COVID.
Right.
So you have to take, if the world is now having to bend and stretch and change things to move around this global situation, the film industry should do the same. And I think, and I hate saying this, but I think Disney kind of put it in their head to say, maybe we can kind of skate by this without no one noticing. Well, guess what? Her people noticed.
Yeah.
And now it's to the notion of, now they're kind of swinging back, saying, oh, it's because of COVID. It's because, yes, it is because of COVID. But at the same time, you have to adjust some things, being that this film was supposed to be released years prior to its now date that it was released.
Oh yeah, and George, believe me, the COVID language in that statement by Disney was definitely put in there for legal reasons. It's been rumored now that Disney's going to be using the hand of God clause, which is basically like almost every contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost every contract has something like this in there, where it's basically like, if there's some kind of big thing, unforeseeable event that kind of prevents one of the parties from fulfilling their contract, it kind of gives more flexibility. Will Disney be successful in that? I don't know, because what Vash was saying, that Warner Brothers has done similar things and adjusted, so they might have a hard time doing that. But that COVID language in that statement was not an accident. That was that whole statement, by the way. People are kind of blaming the gal who, which, by the way, the woman who actually did that statement is one of Bob Iger's inner circle, according to Deadline. Mm-hmm. She's retiring along with Bob Iger, so that's a very interesting kind of weird thing going on. And it's an Iger person, not a Chapek person, who wrote that very controversial statement. And we'll dive into that in a second. But yeah, that COVID language is definitely illegal. A legal means. They're definitely pushing that COVID angle for sure.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Absolutely.
What were you going to say, Rudio? Did you have any thoughts?
Well, I just wanted to say, it's funny how Warner Brothers comes out looking as the good guy, because they nipped this in the bud immediately. Once they announced that whole 2021 film slate coming to HBO Max and theaters same day, you heard nothing but silence from the stars soon after. You heard sort of an uproar, but then Warner Brothers immediately shut that down with throwing out those bonuses and throwing out that stipulation, letting the people, these are high paying actors. This is, let's think about the HBO Max film slate. This is Margot Robbie with Suicide Squad. This is LeBron James with Space Jam. This is Denis Villeneuve with a whole ensemble with Dune coming out in October. Like, just think of the payroll that HBO Max and Warner Brothers had to shell out for them to be looked at as like, hey, they took care of us in the back end, and now Disney looks like the bad guys on their end because they couldn't do the same thing.
Well, and especially on top of it, to release Scarlett's pay for the film. Mm-hmm. She just come out and say, oh, well, she made this, I mean, yada, yada, yada. It's like, really, Disney? It's like, you already got the backlash for even having this lawsuit, and you're going to throw her into it. It's only making you look, as you said, Rudy, the bad guys.
Well, that's what I don't get about that whole thing is like, like Rudy was saying. I mean, they're paying people off because obviously they don't want to, create a big stink, and they do want to, have those relationships be intact at the end of the day. Look, if I understand it, there's only going to be a couple of streaming services left. There's not, there's not going to be like, 15 or whatever. It's going to be like 3, and you have to position yourself in the marketplace to be able to, be one of the last ones. At the end of the day. And look, there are right ways to do this, and there are wrong ways to do this. Speaking of wrong ways, what in the was up with that statement? How does that leave anywhere within the company? I mean, it's just, it's sad and distressing. And then it's like, oh, she doesn't know about the real implications about the COVID-19. But are you serious? Are you really? That's what you're going out as your defense? So look, Dan Petrocelli, his response, to me, it seems like PR. It seems like they're trying to, come out of this PR black hole right here, because that statement was just unbelievable. Because obviously it's one of those like, they kind of got us. Let's kind of put something out here. Let's just kind of clear the fire down and all that. No, they inflamed everybody. Now, even amongst us fans, maybe it didn't mean all that much, but within the industry, that set them off. That set them off, because look, you're dealing with people's pay. You're taking this long chain of things and you're cutting that chain in half, and that chain that's going to be the victim of that, where exactly he's got the see George got the chain right there. That's what I'm talking about. All those people are going to be affected. Even on Scarlett Johansson's bonuses, that $50 million is not going into her pocket. She's paying managers, lawyers, agency. She's paying off everybody. Everybody gets a back end on this, and that results in bloat and why these friggin' films are so expensive. But at the same time, if you're gonna cut, you gotta cut the right way. You can't do this.
Well, yeah, but one thing that I do have to say though is I think that lawyer Petrelli kind of mentioned this in his recent statement, was saying something to the effect of like, what ScarJo's team is asking is like so out of pocket that we can't really we couldn't possibly even accommodate it. We don't really know what they're asking. We don't know what ScarJo's asking. I mean, Disney, in fairness, has been able to work out deals with other people, other celebrities. So far, no other suits have come forward quite yet. What is ScarJo asking, though, that Disney is so adamant against? It does seem a little weird to me they're digging their heels in for just $25 million. I don't know.
Could it be that, did they actually have negotiations before the lawsuit came out? Like
Petrocelli said they did.
Okay, so her people actually met with Disney's people, and they wouldn't budge, and then the lawsuit came out.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm very curious about this, because I think that I think that here's one thing, and then we'll kind of move on to Iger and Chapek. But one thing I just want to kind of address here is I think there definitely is an incentive here. There's a lot of powerful people that benefit from the theatrical release windows, the theater chain, the theater lobbies, all these
NATO,
organizations.
Or not NATO, but the National Theater Association. Yeah,
exactly. And so there's definitely a lot of kind of like maneuvering here to prevent this premier access kind of model from sort of doing permanent damage to the theater chains. I think there's a lot going on with that. I think there's a lot of the issue's far bigger than ScarJo. Far bigger than her. And I think that's you're kind of seeing a lot of maneuvering here. It's not so much about ScarJo being fairly compensated. It's more about the industry and their concerns for kind of the diminishing relevancy of the theaters, what's really on trial here.
You also have to think too, even back in the 90s, that this sort of kind of came and played out with Disney and Robin Williams, as an individual person, of why he chose not to be the genie for the Return of Jafar. It was, because of what it had to do with the merchandising, licensing agreement or something that they wanted him to.
From what I understand from Robin Williams' perspective, he was already going to be doing he was already committed to another film. I believe it was Toys, if I'm not mistaken. And so
that sounds about right. Timeline wise, yeah.
Correct. And so he didn't want the genie to be play a huge part of the marketing. I think he actually specified in his contract saying that like posters can only use up to 50% of genie iconography or something like that. Because he felt committed to his previous project, and so he felt. I mean, look, this is how he felt. I don't know. I mean, it's just, I would say, promotion, bigger film, whatever. But because it was coming out so closely, it might cannibalize that film. Sure enough, it did. And you know, to be fair to Robin Williams, that story is quite interesting because apparently the posters and marketing in the LA area where he lives was, you know, the contract was fulfilled, but in other markets it wasn't. And he was perturbed. And look, this goes back to, and I think the bigger issue playing out is relationships, right? The relationships with talent. You know, Marvel is unlike almost any other studio because it really needs to foster those relationships in a unique way that other franchises don't need to deal with, because Marvel's putting out like 30 films as opposed to like 4 or 5. And so keeping those relationships intact is vital. And I think this is a great bridge to go to the Bob Chapek and Bob Iger discussion, because, you know, the larger story playing out here is, you know, I don't think Scarlett Johansson was working alone here. Okay,
definitely.
The only way this lawsuit goes forward is if she has assurances that her career in Hollywood's not dead. Okay, and I think she was given assurances that wouldn't happen if she were to go forward with the lawsuit. You know, keep in mind here, weekend 2, NATO puts out this big old letter saying this is why this is a bad practice. This is why you're losing money and all that kind of stuff. You know, Brian Lord's comments, her agent who represents Creative Artists Agency, is very, very intriguing. It speaks to a lot of the issues that the industry is now feeling. And now you have Kevin Feige, who's like, oh my God, I can't believe this actually happened, because from his end, and understandably so, relationships are hurt. And that might speak to what might be going behind the scenes regarding Chapek and Bob Iger, if we want to get to that conversation.
Absolutely. Let's pivot now. Let's talk about Bob Iger, Bob Chapek. There's been a lot of outlets, you know, Hollywood trades reporting there is increasing tension amongst Bob Iger and Bob Chapek, and it really it didn't start with this. It actually started back in, I think, April, when Iger announced to the media that he's going to play a more hands-on role in the company after he left and gave Chapek the CEO position. But I guess apparently he didn't tell Bob Chapek that, and Bob Chapek found that out from the media reports. So that caused a little bit of a sour grape situation, and understandably so. I don't blame Chapek for that. Iger should have had the respect to be like, hey, I'm gonna come out and say I'm gonna have a little more hands-on. Is that okay with you? I know you're the CEO now. I don't want to step on any toes. He should have done that. But that sort of triggered this whole kind of the beginning of the snowball. And then now, from what we're hearing from all the trades, is that this, you know, Scarlett Johansson thing, Iger is mortified. He's absolutely mortified that this is going on. George, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do you believe these reports that there is tension between these two men? Do you think that it's sort of maybe exaggerated for views and clicks, or what are your thoughts? Where do you stand on it?
Well, I think even before the lawsuit even broke out on media, you could kind of already feel the tension between the battle of the Bobs, so to speak, is what I like to call it. It's like little things here and there, because even when Iger first announced, you know, with his retirement as CEO, Chapek is standing in. If you watch that interview, you can literally see, rather the spotlight move over from Iger to Chapek, it stayed on Iger. Iger answered all the questions. He was talking, and it's like Chapek is just like sitting there as like the younger sibling, just like sitting there. It's like, okay, let big brother talk. It's like, it's one of those transitions that really the company never really had to face, because again, I've mentioned this many times before. I really truly feel that after the executives didn't want Staggs to move forward into the position after Iger, there was really nobody left that I feel could have fulfilled that position. And time was running out. Iger kept on putting out his retirement of saying, okay, it's going to be this date. It's going to be December of this year. And then it got pushed back again. So again, that's where it kind of even ties in, even like with Black Widow. When everything gets delayed for a certain purpose and it comes to a boil, you have an explosion. And this is where I think it started at that point, and now here it is. And I really think that they're trying to be somewhat on a professional level without actually coming out and saying, hey, I have a problem with this guy. But I really think a lot more is going to come out once Iger is officially gone from the company and Chapek fully steps out into the spotlight.
And here's the thing that's interesting about that, George.
This is going to end well.
Yeah, isn't this going to end well, huh?
And here's the thing that's interesting about this. If the trades are correct, and there really is animosity between these two men, and Iger is really mortified, and Feige's mortified, and Iger and Feige and all these people are so mad at Chapek, and they think he's really bungling. If that's true, Iger's still chairman of the board. You will see, in my opinion, if all these trades are correct, you will see movement to remove Chapek. If Iger leaves in December and there's nothing, Chapek still has his job and nothing happens, then I'm going to really start to question these sources, because I would find it hard to believe that there would be all this drama between Iger and Chapek and Feige and Chapek, and they don't do anything. When Iger sits as the chairman of the board, when he has the power to vote him out, while he's still there till December, I think that the action up until December when he leaves will really dictate to us what the truth is, in my opinion.
But also to the same token of how even Chapek got appointed as CEO, if they were to vote him out, do they even have someone as a backup?
Well, they wouldn't even necessarily need to. I mean, they might have somebody. Remember, they just bought Fox, so they inherited a bunch of new executives from that studio too.
True.
You know?
True.
But like, the thing is that like Iger just might say, hey, we just voted to fire Chapek, and I'll be extending my contract one more year to find somebody that can replace him. And he'll be the basically the interim CEO until they can find somebody else. Well, yeah. Rudio, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do you believe that there's tension? Do you think there's a chance Chapek gets fired?
What's funny is I watched this show. I don't know if you guys watch it on HBO. It's called Succession. Okay. So in Succession, probably the end of the first season, there's this big battle between the son who wants to become the CEO and the father who reigns supreme. And there's almost this plan to sabotage on each end who wants to overtake the company. And I feel whoever executes that the best is going to end up becoming the winner in the situation. I mean, if I was a member of that board right now, I would vote no confidence in Bob Chapek. That's just my opinion. That's just me overlooking what he's done in the past, what he's doing now. I would vote no confidence in him and bring Bob Iger to pretty much salvage the troops, pretty much make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen. I mean, Bob Chapek's looking at the situation as of right now. You have to look for the next 10 to 20 years, making sure that talent's going to be taken care of, making sure that Marvel Studios, you're probably the biggest moneymaker right now, the studio who's got the best track record. Sorry to say, it's not Star Wars, it's not Lucasfilm, it's not Pixar right now. Pixar's kind of pissed at you because you put all those movies on Disney Plus for.
And Chapek was the one who frontlined Disney Plus, because I remember I was actually at the parks when he made this announcement, when he said Disney Plus is going to be the front runner from now on, and the parks are going to be put on the back burner. So when you have the CEO saying, okay, Disney Plus is going to be the front line of the whole entire company, and then you have a lawsuit based off of what you're releasing on that streaming service, well, who is it going to point to? It's going to point to the CEO.
Yeah, I actually do agree though with Chapek's call on that. I think that the streaming service is more important right now.
It is. Yeah,
I think that this is something that you really have to put your flag in and stake your market share. The parks are established entities. They don't. Yeah, they can kind of, I'm not saying let them rot or anything, but I mean they can kind of coast a little bit with that. But Vash, what are your thoughts on the Iger Chapek thing? The tension? Do you think Chapek's getting fired or?
Well,
That's not up to you.
Okay. Sorry, I clipped all these things in advance. I'm going to use them. Okay. But no, I mean, look, listen, there are definitely some battle drums being draw in the sand here. Okay, I think the leaks from the trades are on purpose. I think they're leaking stuff. I think that is a purposeful effort to kind of get people's thoughts across and get kind of create opinions and drive them in the public sphere and drive them in the court of public opinion. Which, by the way, going back to Disney's response for just one moment here, that was a court of public opinion battle right there. They didn't have any, legal case that they were drawing up, which is also why I'm kind of. But look, even going back to that though, there was a lot of emotion in that. This is not just an attack on Disney. This lawsuit here, this is an attack at Chapek, because now that Alan Braverman's gone or whatever, he's kind of in the command seat here because he made the choice to distribute this film on Disney Plus without tying up the loose ends of somebody like Scarlett Johansson. Okay, and this whole kind of thing, I think, I don't know who's orchestrating it, because there's just so many. You just don't see this in Hollywood. You don't see like a top rate talent like Scarlett Johansson go after Disney like this, because she will be blacklisted. It's one of those.
We're still friends, right?
Yeah. See, there you go. Right.
Do you have all the audio cues? Do you have the one where it's like, "See you on the other side"? Do you have that one ready?
No, I don't. I don't. Oh man, I should have grabbed that. That's in Civil War, right? That's in like.
No, it's in Endgame, when they're about to go through the time warp. When they're about to go.
Yes. Right, when they had the suits and they got the. Okay. No, I don't have that.
It's okay.
But okay. But my point is though, I think I don't know if it's Kevin Feige. I don't know if it's Bob Iger. It's very interesting. I think the third weekend that Black Widow was out, the Business Insider article was put forward, and one of the big lines in there was Chapek ending these long-term contracts that they used to have for both talent and for executives. And I think that put a lot of people on edge, especially somebody like Kevin Feige, who's, he's got like a whole universe to craft. Yeah. And he doesn't know who's going to be there in 5 years or whatever. That's crazy. How do you even do your job?
Look, I totally believe in flexibility, but but you also have to, like in Marvel's case, you have to know when you're mapping out a cinematic universe, you got to know that you have a certain star locked in for the next 5 years, so you can map that universe out.
Yeah.
That it's wild, but I really do think the truth will come out, because
absolutely,
if Iger and the board, if Iger leaves in December and nothing happens from this, and Chapek is still there, then I'm seriously going to question the validity of what these trades are reporting. Because I would just find it hard to believe that that Iger, who really Marvel is his baby. I mean, Bob Iger loves Marvel. He's proud of what he accomplished with Feige with Marvel, and he should be. But if he just sits back and lets Chapek sit there and burn that to the ground and leaves in December, then there's something going on here, and I don't think that the tension is as bad as we think it is.
But why would Bob Iger do that? Why would Iger leave Chapek out in the hill like that? See, that's what I don't understand. And then you're having some Bob Iger loyalist?
Well, that's what I was going to
prove that statement.
That's what I was going to end up saying. It's not even just with Marvel. Even as Rudio mentioned, even look at Pixar. Pixar got a big whopping goose eggs. All these came from Iger. None of these companies would even be connected into the Walt Disney Company if it wasn't for Iger. Right. So, as Vash's point, that's where I'm kind of confused, looking at both ends of the spectrum, because Iger would step in by now, but yet at the same point, I think honestly Chapek would have been already gone before it even hit to this point. So it's like, who is run? It's almost like who's running the show here. It's like that's.
Well, yeah, and the woman who wrote the statement that we've all said was completely out of line was one of Bob Iger's inner circle. It was that Xenia. I forgot. I mean, you know what? I'll look it up right now. Hold on. Walt Disney Company. I think her name is Xenia, or her last name. She is. Yes, it's Xenia Mucha. I'll go ahead and screen share real quick. She has been with Disney for a very long time, and she's one of Bob Iger's right-hand people. In fact, Deadline said she was Bob Iger's inner circle when she announced her retirement a few weeks ago. So this is not somebody who would make a rookie mistake like that. So why is she saying?
So do you think, not to to accuse anybody, but I mean, was this whole thing for Chapek to be set up for failure? I mean, because after the fact that the pandemic was released,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're fine. Because after the fact that the pandemic was, it came to fruition, it's all over the world. It's like Iger was like, peace, I'm out. It's like, I'm done. I'm putting in my resignation from the company. And then it's like, okay, well, here's Chapek. And I think they kind of knew the direction that Chapek would take the company based off of him becoming the parks chairman. And let's face it, I mean, it really wasn't the highlight of the company with him being the chairman. So it's like, well, what if we kind of use him as the scapegoat, up until the point. Again, I'm not trying to say that that's Iger's fault, but it's just like, I'm not seeing anything come from either side. It's like everything is just happening and it's a standstill, and no one is coming forth to say, hey, you know what, I'm pulling on the reins here. We got to get this back on track. Because honestly, if it was of how Frank Wells and the Eisner era, they would have done something about it by now.
The problem I have though, there has been this kind of theory going around that like from the beginning, Iger wanted to set Chapek up for failure. See, I think maybe now he does, because maybe now he's not happy with the job he's doing. But I don't think he would do that from the onset, from the very beginning, because Iger has been very vocal in his desire to have a clean succession plan, because Iger is smart. He knows that this succession directly impacts his legacy. If Chapek goes down in flames after Iger has been on all these talk shows saying that Chapek's the right man for the job and his board voted for Chapek, Iger would look very bad.
It'd have a cloud over all of D plus too, which is kind of the one last thing that Bob Iger left for the entire company.
So what do you think that Iger is actually waiting for, in the sense of not making a move?
That's a good question. Rudio, what do you think? What is Iger waiting for? If he's so mortified, he's chairman of the board, vote him out. What's going on?
That's the one thing that I'm curious on too, is like, when are they going to strike? Because in the grand scheme of things, this is a battle within a war.
Oh yeah.
This is just one big war with this small battle. I mean, like OG, you keep saying Iger's planning to leave in December 31st, 2021.
Right.
When does that move happen? Does it happen before the next shareholder meeting? Because I was just telling a friend of mine that next shareholder call, the quarterly conference call. Yeah, it's gonna be pay-per-view
next week. That's next week. I mean, it's coming. So look, that question and answer session. Oh, there's gonna be some questions. There's gonna be some questions.
Then make amend. They should put it on Disney Plus and have a premiere access for people to buy into it.
There you go. I like it.
We need to have a react video to that shareholder call meeting.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. No, we will. No, we will absolutely, because that's gonna be fire. Total. Like, there's gonna be. It'll be very interesting. Will Bob Iger show up? Will he stand up for his guy Chapek? Will he not show up? What will Chapek say about everything going on? It'll be very, very telling. But what are they waiting for?
Yeah,
I just don't know. I really don't know. And I really do. And maybe I'm just naive. I really do believe, though, even though Iger is a businessman, I really do believe he does have the best interest of the company at heart. You might not agree with everything he does, but I do think he does care about this company and his legacy and everything, and he does want the company to be in good standing when he leaves. I just can't see him sitting back, and if he really feels Chapek is burning things to the ground, allowing him to do that when he has the power up until December.
Maybe that's why he's waiting. Maybe he's actually waiting for the quarterly meeting.
Maybe.
I'll throw out this question right here for everybody involved in this chat right here. Let's say I am the the mediator, and I'm telling all of you who are figuratively members of the board, do you vote? What is your vote on Chapek? Vote of confidence or vote of no confidence? Individually, what do you guys vote on?
Go ahead, George, and then Vash, I'll close it out.
Based off of everything I've seen thus far, I would have to actually vote him out. I would. It's nothing personal. I just think he is just not the type to run this type of company. I mean, he was a consumer products guy. And by combining everything within consumer products, he still has that weight for him. And to run an entertainment business like the Walt Disney Company, I truly feel that if I was part of the board and I had, bless his heart, Roy Disney sitting next to me, that he was trying to, I really don't think that they would keep Chapek in. I really don't. I mean, if he actually wanted Eisner out, I can't foresee him keeping Chapek over Eisner.
What do you think, Vash? Would you vote no confidence?
Look, Tom Staggs was considered for the CEO position, and the board, and I think the large shareholders declined because, as Ike Perlmutter put it, he doesn't have any pre-relationships with talent. He doesn't know that business. So that's how crucial the relationships within the industry were to the shareholders, investors, to the board itself. And that's why he wasn't considered for the role. Chapek has burned bridges within the industry. He has burned bridges with A-lister talent. He has burned bridges with internal talent at multiple studios. He has burned bridges with Imagineering. He has set a dark course for the entire parks division. Consumer products, I think, yes, absolutely. A vote of no confidence I think it fits here.
Yeah, I think that, man, I'm kind of a little bit torn on this. I think because if the trades are correct and they're not, and this isn't spin, there's no, and they are correct with Iger being upset and Feige is like, pissed off and the whole thing, then I think you fire Chapek. But if it's not that, and there is a justifiable reason as to why they're digging their heels in with ScarJo and things like that, we're not aware of yet, then I think he should keep his job. But I do think that if the Hollywood trades are right and these outlets are reporting the truth that Iger and him and Feige and all them are mad, I think you kind of have to. Because look, the reason why I say that is if the reason why that we're not aware of, that they're resisting ScarJo's demands, if it comes out that, hey, ScarJo was out of pocket and what she was asking for was ridiculous and Disney would set a precedent that would destroy them or something if they were to accept, I don't think it's fair to fire him over that when he's just looking out for the company's well-being. That's his job. You know what I'm saying? I understand that it's important to maintain talent, but it's also important to keep the company afloat. You don't just kind of give them whatever they want either, No. So I think that there has to be, look, if she's being fair with what her demands are behind the scenes, then he should absolutely be fired.
Well, should the decision be made for Chapek solely just based off of the ScarJo lawsuit?
I mean, honestly, I would say, yeah, I think it's a big enough issue. I do, because like Vash was saying, the ramifications. I mean, I think that for
generations, I was telling somebody last night, this is as close to the lawsuit with Napster and those musicians back in the year 2000. This is
Metallica.
Yeah, this is probably on par with that.
Yeah, and I honestly, and I know a lot of people, I know I'm going to hear a lot of heat in the comments for saying this. I really didn't think Chapek was that bad for the 5 years he ran the parks. I didn't see a huge downward spiral with maintenance or anything. We got some pretty cool stuff. It wasn't the end of the world. It really wasn't. I didn't see, maybe Florida's different. I know Florida's got monorail problems, doors falling off and the stuff. I know that.
I'm sorry, George.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
He cut Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I will never forgive him for that. Ever.
Never forget.
Cannot.
But, yeah, and that wasn't
But
cool.
let me put it to you this way: the Jungle Cruise was the backside of water. Our monorail system is the backside of the door.
Ah.
Too funny. So yeah, I mean, I didn't think he did that much. I didn't think he was that bad. But now, mind you, I'm old enough to remember the Paul Pressler era.
Yeah.
Where
So I don't think no one can touch that. That's
No.
like
and
bad.
Chapek doesn't come close to that. And no, not even close to that. So I don't know. I think the ScarJo thing, though, the ramifications with talent, the trust issues that it presents with talent, I think would be enough to fire him. I just need to know a little bit more as to what she's demanding. I do find it odd that a lot of other talent is able to work these deals out with them, but ScarJo is sort of a sticking point. I think that is a little bit strange.
Well, that's why Emma Stone might be coming out. And who does Brian Lord? What's his agency? The CAA. Who's on that list of short actors? Oh, was it Emily Blunt? Maybe that's why she hasn't said anything. Look, this has larger repercussions, like you said. I wouldn't base it solely on this. This has a lot to do with it. Go ahead, George. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, actually, that's exactly what I was just going to mention. That lo and behold, everything was all hush hush, and now that one comes out, okay, now here comes Emma Stone from the back ends of Cruella, and there's supposed to be a sequel. So could this kind of get the gears turning to say, okay, well, let's see if what we can get from the first one. Hey, if you guys want to make that sequel, if you want her, you're going to have to adjust some things. And it's like, and as far as with Scarlett, I mean, I guess with the Tower of Terror collaboration with her and Disney, that's pretty much.
That's going to be it.
Yeah, and Vash, you brought up a great point earlier when you said that ScarJo was promised reassurances, but the issue though with that, she maybe the other studios will hire her again. There is no way on God's green earth that Disney, Pixar, Animation, Lucasfilm, Marvel, any of the Disney-owned studios, regardless of reassurances, she's ever working for them again.
Not. Hang on. I know. It's bad. It's bad. Yeah, she's gonna go off that cliff right now. Yeah, that's it.
Please no.
That's it. That's gonna be all she wrote right here.
And it's Chapek with the time stone.
Yeah. There he goes. That's her career, right there.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think it might be. We're Disney,
but not if Chapek is not around anymore. See, that's
true.
That's the other issue that comes into play here. That's why I think multiple, like Emily Blunt, who works with CAA. I think I said that before. I just want to make that sure because I mix Emma Stone and Emily Blunt up all the time. Emma Stone coming out, doing something potentially. Emily Blunt. This is a multifaceted attack, and I will say, if this stays in arbitration and they can work it out, yeah, okay. Well, then that's it. If they can settle it, fine. But if this goes into open court and she's granted discovery, and she gets to look through all the emails and communications relating to her specific issue, and there's dirt, and it comes out, there is no choice. The board has no choice at that point.
And that's like we're kind of in the dark right now with all this because both Scarlett and her people and the Walt Disney Company, they're both standing their ground. Mm-hmm. It's like neither one of them are shaking. So it's like they both are confident to pursue this. So it's like whoever ends up winning, it's really going to make the other one look really, really bad. And really, can Disney afford that right now?
Did you see the head of the Screen Actors Guild came out and said something about the statement? And then you had like Time's Up and some of the other kind of Me Too organizations coming out. I mean, this looks bad.
Because now it's pushing to the fact that because now it's claiming for female actors and
quality
female and all that. Yeah, so it's like when one little creak of a door opens, it like pushes all the other doors open, and it's like, and now it's like all eyes are on Disney. It's like, and that's how they respond back. But the way that they respond back is what makes me feel of, you're kind of being a little bit more, insensitive to the issue at hand. You could have, done it a little bit more professional, but it's
tactfully.
Like, but it's like the way that they're doing it's like they're overconfident. So being that they're overconfident, it's what do they know that Scarlett may not know, and what does Scarlett know that Disney doesn't know?
Yeah, there's something afoot with that, and to kind of wrap up this segment, I do think that if it ramps up, like Vash was saying, goes to open court, stuff like that, Chapek is done. Chapek is done. If there's dirt out there like that comes out publicly, he's done. I think right now he's probably done if what the trades are saying is true. I can't imagine Bob Iger, if he's mortified, sitting back and allowing him to keep his job and be like, oh, I'll leave in December and not worry about it. He's not that guy. Bob Iger is not, especially when you're messing
like that
with
meme.
Baby
He's not that. You're not that guy, bro. You're not that guy.
You're not that guy.
It's interesting because you're not seeing a whole lot of other MCU stars and a whole lot of A-lister talent defending Disney now, are you? I think
But to be fair, you're not seeing them defending ScarJo either. And they all came out for Chris Pratt. They came out for James Gunn.
Well, that's a blacklist right there, so that's what. No, you do make a fair point. They're saying silent is what I'm saying. They're not getting into it one way or another.
They're staying silent, and they were not silent.
You don't see no petitions out there for Scarlett like they did with Gunn.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, you saw a lot of the actors from the MCU say, "Hey, he was unfairly fired." James Gunn was
the director. He wasn't even an actor. He was the director. I mean, he brought Guardians to how successful they are, and I mean, it was an uproar when they fired him.
And nobody's touching it. The actors aren't touching it, but they're, like Vash was saying, though, they're not defending Disney either. So they're all scared to move. They're just
But after the fact, we really find out who the real person is in the right. Then everyone's going to come out at once.
I was always on her side. What are you talking about?
Yeah, silently I called her. We were tweeting back and forth. Where? I want to see the receipts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was messaging her. She was crying on my shoulder.
It's wild. It's wild. I do think, though, I was telling Vash this the other day. My feeling, though, is that I'm leaning way more towards Chapek getting fired fairly soon than I was even a couple weeks ago. Like, I really do believe something is afoot. Something doesn't feel right. Something's weird. We'll see. We will see. And Iger's been silent. And that's another thing. If this is fake and what the trades are reporting is not true, Iger should really step up and be like, hey, look, our new CEO is being unfairly attacked. This is not what's going on. He needs to come out and do that if the trades are wrong. If they're wrong.
Yeah. That's true. They gotta get
nothing is being said, whether it's true or not. It's like no one's confirming nor denying.
Do you really want the first instance for this to come out during the quarterly earnings call? I mean, is that really like where you want to take these grievances to? Because that's what they're setting up. They're setting up for one heck of a question and answer section. Unless they pre-screen calls.
Maybe they're waiting for the actual numbers. Once they get the numbers and they see where it's placed, it's like, well, here's the reason.
Well, yeah, and I do think, though, these Jungle Cruise numbers do bode well for them, though, with that case, because kind of shows that it didn't get a huge drop, and that's kind of ScarJo's thing. Like, well, the day and date thing is sort of messing her up.
But honestly, looking at the amounts that Black Widow has made already, to me, that seemed like the typical, whether it was on Disney Plus or not. As I said before, I can't foresee Black Widow being a $300 million movie that it made domestically. I just can't see it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. This is going to be interesting, and that earnings report is going to be fire. We will come back for that one.
Oh my god, are you kidding me? Of course we're going to come back for this one.
Live react.
Now, I think you had a reviewer. Comment submission as far as.
Yes. Let's dive into that.
Cool.
Hold on one sec. Let's dive into that because that was a great question. So I got this subscriber question the other day, and I thought it was fantastic, and it actually pertains a lot to what we're actually talking about today. Cool. So Ryraf, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but Ryraf is saying, as a John Campea watcher, curious to know what you guys think of this theory that Chapek adding Kareem Daniels' position as head of distribution just adds an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy, undoing what really worked well under Iger's watch. ScarJo is the biggest name to surface right now. but I wonder how folks at Pixar and Walt Disney Animation are taking this really. They have been losing other talent recently, like departures of Ronnie Del Carmen and Rich Moore, though no official word on why. It just seems like there are a lot of leaks to these trades from disgruntled folks in the industry, and Chapek's team seems to be doubling down, like we talked about, on their stance rather than trying to work with the detractors to reach a good compromise. Now, I also do want to bring up this real quick, and then I do have Chapek actually had an interview with the lovely Julie Bornstein of CNBC, and Chapek was actually kind of defending what Rye Ralph was discussing here. We're saying that like what this move does is it before, I guess historically what would happen was that individual studios would set where content would go, so they would decide if it was on Disney Plus or in theaters or what have you. Chapek's argument to this is that we wanted to take that, which is technically a business decision, put it in the hands of business people and let the creatives just worry about the creative aspect. Okay, so that, not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that when he and I'll link this down below, but his interview with Julie Bernstein, that's his justification for it, was that it gives the creatives more ability to focus on what they do and leave the marketing, the business distribution end to Kareem Daniel. Now, I'll start with you, Vash, in terms of Rye Ralph's comment. What are you feeling, man? What do you think about this?
I only act like I know everything.
Look, I think this is very interesting. You know, we've had this discussion before as far as the bureaucracy that Chapek is adding. Look, we had some. I mean, not only just high profile losses in talent like Ronnie Del Carmen and Rich Moore, but we also, I mean, you know, right when this transition was taking place, we lost some key Imagineers that have been on for a long time. Joe Rohde, Kevin Rafferty, they kind of like, oh, I'm gonna get out of here with this transitional period taking place, and we were all like, I wonder why they're leaving so soon, you know, because in the case of Joe Rohde, he had active projects going on. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is going up at Disneyland. Why is Kevin Rafferty leaving? He was supposed to be the head of that project and so forth. And then we have, you know, Imagineering being, you know, taken from Glendale to Lake Nona, and, you know, just all these things. That's kind of, like I said before, during our pseudo our play board comment, you know, he has burned some relationships, and one of the ways you do that is you add layers of this bureaucracy, you add layers of management, right? This kind of middle role, and I think that's what John Campy was really saying. It's like, well, wait a minute, you have Kevin Feige, who gets rid of Ike Perlmutter so that he can speak directly to, you know, Bob Iger in terms of a lot of decisions that were being made, has direct relationships with Alan Horn, and now you're adding in this middle layer here. How does this make sense? I can see what Bob Chapek's saying. Also, too, remember, he's got to kind of set the tone for the entire company, so he needs some of his people in his camp directing what's going to happen here. My pushback to that is like, at what point does that become, well, you've got to make this product to be released in this way, versus letting the creators be creative and having that product settled on you, and then you figure out where that distribution goes. I can see that kind of tug and pull there, and it seems to me maybe a little bit unnecessary, but what do you guys think?
Well, Vash, I do want to ask you, and I honestly genuinely don't know the answer to this. I don't know if you do either, but wasn't there always kind of a little bit of wasn't there always kind of like a demand to some degree from Burbank down? Like Disney Animation, for example, Disney Feature Animation, Disney Animation Studios, they can't just do whatever they want, even under Iger. Like there was an expectation there from Burbank that they were going to release 1 or 2 a year. So isn't there always kind of this kind of pressure from above that like, well, we really want you to release this many a year. We want you to do a show for Disney Plus. Wasn't that always kind of there already?
I suppose, but any kind of delivery like that would have been delivered to the head of the studio, and then the head of the studio would figure that out.
Mhm.
And now you have somebody in between all that. You have Burbank, C-suite, and then you have Kareem Daniels, and now you have the Burbank. Or now I think they have now they have a new studio coming up in Canada,
Vancouver.
Vancouver. Yeah.
Yep.
So now you have somebody between all that, and it's like that's kind of weird because now do the head creatives and the head leadership at those studios have full control over that process? Do they have? I mean, can they dictate that kind of stuff out? I mean, that's kind of where this tug and pull comes from. It's like you have this Kareem Daniels who's now in there saying, potentially saying you have to produce this product for this distribution schedule, for this distribution method, and that's why it's kind of up in the air right now.
And that's sort of kind of like how Pixar used to be when Lasseter was running the show with the animation studios, because after Toy Story 2, after he did Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, he kind of passed the torch down to these other directors. You have Pete Docter, Andrew Stanton. Then he brought Brad Bird in, and they kind of all did their own thing, where it was like their style, their story, their type of animation. So it almost seems like, again, just like with the 2D animation, it's almost like a way of like a dying art form, so to speak, where it's like someone else has control over your baby.
But it's different to have a John Lasseter or an Ed Catmull there, right? Guys who have worked in this creative field versus Kareem Daniels.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like that's a different thing.
That's where it's like, you're kind of throwing these people in there. It's like, again, what is the real plan? It's like these things are being added or taken out within the company, but there's no true explanation as to why.
When it really depends on what Kareem Daniels has authority to do. If it's really just like what Chapek was saying, Kareem just gets the content, and then Kareem decides where it gets placed, whether Disney Plus, ABC, or theaters. If it's just that, I probably don't have that much of an issue with it. But if Kareem is actually going to the studios and saying, I need you to make this, this, and this, I'm going to have an issue with that. So it just depends on what kind of power he has. If he's just a decision maker as to where it lands, what platform, that doesn't really bother me.
But even like how what happened with Luca, it's like it went directly to Disney Plus, no premium access, no nothing. So everyone that worked on that film, the directors, the writers, the animators, and I think Orange Grove, you and I had a discussion about this at a prior video of how much control does one have over their own film, because they're pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into these films, and to just say, to cast it off, to say, okay, it's just going to be put on Disney Plus free of charge, just go and watch it. It kind of makes you feel like your craft isn't good enough compared to another person's film.
And that's probably, and then I'm going to jump to Rudio, but that's probably one of the big reasons why one of the big arguments against this move actually is that it's up to Kareem Daniels. So there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason behind it. Like every Pixar movie doesn't get a premiere access or a theatrical release, but every Disney animation movie has. It's kind of like, what, does Kareem just not like Pixar movies or what? What's going on? Why is one? Personally, I thought Luca ran circles around Raya the Last Dragon. I love Luca.
Oh, I agree. Luca was phenomenal compared to Raya, to be honest.
The response has been very high.
Yeah, it was a fantastic movie. Rudio, what are your thoughts on this?
With the whole Kareem thing, it's just like how you said, OG. If he's just delegating it to saying, hey, this project would be great on Hulu. This project would be great if you want to put it on ESPN Plus. Like, there's so many avenues where he has things to play with. Like, if that's his job, perfect. But if he's in the creative spot and he's telling these guys who, like how George was saying, pouring their heart and soul into these projects and being like, we don't really want that. You need to go ahead and change this. We need to market it to this. You're making people mad here. We need to please this. If he's doing that, That's where I have the issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
if he's
that's
dabbling too much in the creative end, then I'm gonna have a major issue. What were you gonna say, Dustin?
that potentially that could be a good thing, like Jeffrey Katzenberg, for instance, right? I think the studio, like the animation studio, needed a Jeffrey Katzenberg in that moment to kind of be more in tune with what the audience wanted. But remember, Jeffrey Katzenberg, he was head of, I think he was Michael Eisner's right-hand man with Paramount, and he was working on a lot of those films and stuff like that. He has experience in that role, whereas Kareem Daniels, I'm not sure. I mean, look, are you treating these studios like a factory? Chapek, Consumer Products. Are you treating them as, product that are to be built on an assembly line, and you're just having somebody just in charge of distribution and putting all that out? Because it's in a factory. This is an assembly line. People who work at these studios feel they're producing art and producing, the kind of they're kind of etching on pop culture, so to speak. So it's just the etching on the edifice of time. But as you see, a Mary Poppins discussion before the show. But that's where I kind of like, look, I don't mind the Jeffrey Katzenbergs, because sometimes that is needed. Sometimes it is needed to where, like, hey, this is a little bit esoteric. You got to get a little bit more. You got to swing this a little bit more towards the audience's direction. This can't be just made for, the Screen Actors Guild or whatever. One thing I will say, oh boy, I might get heat for this. I don't know, but
do it.
That is, that was one thing that John Lasseter was kind of good at when he was there, was kind of being more in tune with the audience wanted, and
I actually agree with you with that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So me and George, we're going down together. We're going down together on this opinion, but
canceled.
Ever since John was out, I do kind of feel that they've kind of lost their way a little bit in regards to that. So a corrective course, that might be applicable, but it's Kareem Daniels, so I don't know.
Well, I must say, I actually had to go back and read that article really close, because at first I thought it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I thought, there you go.
Jesus Christ. That is really getting canceled.
You're right though, Vash. I actually do prefer Pete Docter. I'm an outlier on this, but I actually do prefer Pete Docter as a creative. I like his work a lot more. But I will concede, I think Lasseter had a much better sense of like what the mainstream wants,
Yeah.
Like he could make a summer blockbuster, like just like a Toy Story, He was really good at what the general public wanted. Pete Docter is far more artsy, and we're starting to see these films are a little more artsy. They're kind of smaller in scope.
It's going from tentpole. Pixar is going from tentpole to almost the same way an A24 studio would go. Where it's like these independent movies, but yet they have a big, broad audience. But like you're tapping into one audience who's gonna like it. Like for instance, there's that one movie that's out right now called The Green Knight, and then there's a previous movie that came out earlier this summer called Lola. Like those are two totally different audiences, but you're tapping into that independent soul that people are still gonna want it. I don't know. It's almost like a underground, like grunge feeling when you're watching those movies. That's how I feel.
And that's even like if you look at the animation. Now, I mean, with Luca, it fit well with Luca. I love the animation style of Luca. But when you see the upcoming film, what is it? Becoming Red or whatever the new
Turning Red.
Turning Red. It kind of still has that same Lucas style, so it feels like Pixar's kind of losing. I mean, you take a movie for Brave, for instance, and the hair on Merida is phenomenal. You take a film like Monsters Inc., where you have like the textures of the scale, fur, and exactly. And then you see a movie of Turning Red, and it's like, well, they're kind of moving backwards of how Disney animation used to do after Walt passed, and they were trying to find someone. And actually, Vash and I were having a conversation of that, which I would love to do a collabo of like the history of Disney animation, how it started, where it's going, and I think that would be a great topic.
Yeah, I think you're definitely seeing a shift in the animation, but I think that there's a bigger reason for that than just like maybe just being cheaper or what have you.
Mhm.
I think with CGI, oh, we're really digressing, but I do want
I know,
to
right?
discuss this because this is kind of interesting. But
Sure.
like, I think with CGI, we've kind of hit like a wall. You can
Mhm.
only get so realistic, like before it becomes a live action movie. So I think that the natural evolution of CGI is to start getting more stylized because really, how much more real can you get? It's already real looking, you know?
I'm sorry, you didn't like Mars Needs Moms? You
Oh,
didn't
it was a
like that
masterpiece.
animation style?
It was a masterpiece.
Oh, I was about to say, OJ. I was about to say because that is just an epic. It's just it's not something that the whole company had to absorb the cost of. We had cuts all across the company in all of its lines. No, it was a great film. No, yeah, you're right. You are getting into that uncanny valley. That kind of like if you go too realistic, it's just. So you have to have some illustration. You have to have some kind of, what should I say? You have to have some kind of stylized look to it, right? To get away from that. But I think you guys are right. I think they are kind of losing their edge when it comes to that.
And you're
Yeah.
seeing it more in video. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have the PlayStation 5 and played the new Ratchet and Clank game.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing in that video game, just based off the technology, what they use, it's I want to say it's a little bit better than what Pixar's put out the last 3 years. And
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So with all this being said, is Kareem Daniels justified then in his decisions? I mean, we're all kind of saying, well, the quality has slipped. So is he wrong then?
How long has Kareem Daniels been there?
Oh, that's a good question. I think since the restructuring in October.
Okay, so I mean that's the kind of the issue is like, well, if he's had a
It's almost
distribution,
it's almost like you keep the animation, but you still have some of the realism to it. Where with A Bug's Life, they actually took mini cameras to look through the eyes of A Bug's Life, the translucence of the grass and the flowers, and then with Finding Nemo, they actually went to fish tanks and actually got an up close look at all these fish. Where now it just feels like, okay, let's just get these animators. Here's the story. Draw these characters. It just feels like there's no effort now putting into these films that they used to have. There's like no gusto.
The tough thing about Kareem Daniels is I don't think he's been there long enough to have a huge effect on those kind of properties when it comes to these films, right? I don't think because a lot of these decisions, I mean, they got to be laid out like 3-4 years in advance.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've seen the fruits of the labor, so to speak, when it comes to some of these other films. But if Kareem Daniels is in charge of distribution, or at least he's relaying this information to Chapek, and we've seen some distribution practices that are kind of like, what? Like, really? Pixar doesn't get even premium access? Like, how is that okay? And then you have Ride of the Last Dragon, premium access, big box office debut or whatever. It's like, well, wait, what? And the marketing is a little weird too. Like,
Right.
I mean, I talk to people who are like, a Pixar movie's coming out in a week, and it's like, it's a huge one. They've been working on it for years. What? So promotional would also be factored in that. Go ahead.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And here's the other thing: if we notice everything we've talked about today, all the drama that we're seeing with the company right now, whether you agree with ScarJo, disagree with ScarJo, whether you like Day and Date, whether you don't like Day and Date, literally all the drama stems from the Kareem Daniels side of the company. And I made a video yesterday defending him because I think the rap was kind of unfair in portraying who he was, but it kind of all does stem, whether it come from the Pixar studios being mad about their not getting theatrical releases and premiere access, whether it be the talent situation. It's all coming from that side. So that's a red flag. That's absolutely a red flag.
It absolutely is a red flag. And I look, Campa's position when it comes to the Chapek versus Iger discussion.
God, I sound like a Bob Iger dick rider.
That's his whole thing about that. So I mean, maybe not from that specific point of view where your commenter was coming from, but look, I think we are seeing a radical shift within the company. We're seeing a radical shift when it comes to these properties, these films, these studios, and you gotta place it on somebody. This is big.
It's huge, and I think that, hey, look, I mean, it's going to be interesting. You're right. He's only had the position since October. Let's see how he pans out. He's been with the company. I was reading his profile on the Walt Disney Company website. This guy was involved in the Marvel acquisition. He held a role in Imagineering for a while, operations. So the guy, that's the big issue I have with the rap, and I did a video on it yesterday. But the raps, they label him as this banker, like Chapek was. Chapek was outside Goldman Sachs. Hey, buddy. Hey, bro. You want a job?
Come over here.
Yeah. Come on, buddy. Yeah. And that's not the case. The guy has been around. He worked under Bob Iger too. I mean, he was there for the 2009 acquisition of Marvel. So it's not like he's completely just like a Chapek crony.
No,
he was there for a while. So we'll see what happens. But hey, it's gonna be interesting.
Did we mention, by the way, that Brian Chapek works at Marvel right now? Okay.
It is a producer on Black Widow.
Oh, see? Plot thickens. Okay. You got it. It's very interesting how this whole thing is playing out. And it's honestly, I mean, all we've been discussing here, it's just kind of like these kind of fractures are starting to form and maybe be visible to the human eye in the way they weren't before.
They should just make a drama series, Days of Our Lives Disney edition, because this is basically what it is. It's like this person's coming after this person is in for this. Is it all?
Put it on Disney Plus. Behind the company.
Waking Sleeping Beauty 2.
There you go. Yeah, it's interesting, and Disney has seen through the history things like this like we saw with the Robin Williams thing.
Yeah,
Michael Eisner had a huge falling out, massive falling out with Jeffrey Katzenberg, where Katzenberg started his own company. That was a huge deal for Eisner. So it's not unheard of to have Disney drama. We've had Disney drama for a long time.
I just think now it's more noticeable because we have social media. Everyone follows everything. Where back in the day, it was you see it in newspapers, you see it in magazines, you might see it on the news, but like with social media and all these platforms, it's like it's in your face.
Yeah, and Kevin Feige, we love you, dude, and please tread carefully with Chapek's son because we don't want to lose you.
Well, this is kind of interesting because some people within kind of the fandoms have kind of like, was there kind of a war brewing in Lucasfilm and stuff like that? From what I understand, an Atlantic article came out and kind of confirmed all that was true. And I guess Bob Chapek wasn't, maybe what spurred on the decision to have short-term contracts was because of Kathleen Kennedy. And he kind of wrangled her in. And that kind of may have turned some heads. And I don't think Feige wants to necessarily be on the bad end of that kind of thing.
Right.
He understands that, hey, look, if you want to really make these changes within the company, it's gonna be you or me.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. Now, the last and final topic of the day is going to be day and date releases. This is a very controversial topic. A lot of both with fans and the industry.
I want to before we do that, I want to make a survey. I want to do a survey.
Sure.
Before we do this, so we'll go from the shutdown to about now.
Okay.
Everybody in this chat, how many of you have gone to an actual movie theater to watch a theatrical release?
0.
Bash raising his hand. George hasn't been. OG, have you been to a theater since the shutdown?
No.
Okay. How many of you have gone out of your way to pay the premium, whether that be with Universal, the $30 for Trolls World Tour, Premier Access, Milan? How many of you have done that here?
Yeah.
Dash, have you done that?
I have not.
Okay, so everybody but Bash has paid that $30. Basically, George, you have kids. OG, Bash, and myself, we do not. So we're just catering to ourselves when we're paying this extra premium.
Sure.
George, how did you feel paying that premium, not going out of your way, getting the kids in the car, wrangling them up, going to the theater? Was that something of a relief? Did you feel like, you know what, I could go forward doing something like this for every movie that these kids want to see or that I want to see? Are you willing to shell out that $30 or maybe even $25, whatever the price is on it?
I think for me, as far as I did enjoy the experience at times, going to the theater, seeing it on the big screen and what have you. Since streaming kind of became the front runner since the shutdown and everything, it kind of put in a different perspective of how we watch entertainment. And it's pretty much to the notion of where, and I even asked my son this. I asked him the same question you're asking me, and he said, honestly, I would just prefer to watch it in the comfort of my own home. We're in our room, we make snacks, we get everything. And the premium price for the film, it's almost double, possibly triple if we were to go to the theater, because I mean, one pack of candy is like $7. And then a large fountain drink is like $4. So on top of the $30 that you would just pay for the movie, you're adding all this extra add-ons to it. So we're basically walking out of a 2-hour film and we're putting out like $60.
Yes. So, and you're absolutely, George, and I echo your sentiment. And here's the thing too. If you look at just not even just movies, but just in general, convenience always wins the day. So people complain, oh man, I really miss renting movies at Blockbuster, but everyone was doing streaming though, and everyone was doing Netflix, right? At the end of the day, they can complain about it, but at the end of the day, they always lean toward that convenience. Sure. Look at retail, how much retail brick and mortar stores have gone under because of things like Amazon. Again, people complain, but they still use Amazon more. I think the theater industry is kind of the same thing. I think the theaters have sort of abused their consumers for a long time with what George was saying, with $7 Cokes and ridiculous prices for candy. And it's get price gouging people. And now people have an alternative. Now you can have dinner with your whole family and you're paying per household, not per head. And it's in the comfort of your own home. And the theaters are freaking out because they know now you have an option.
Well, and I have actually a little side story to this, is when we were down Disney World, we were at Disney Springs, and we were down there for when they had the premiere of Black Widow. And they actually had a red carpet and everything for the premiere of in front of the AMC and everything. And I asked Josh, I said, Josh, we're down here. We're here for the premiere. Do you want to go see Black Widow? And he actually told me no. Because he said there's so much more for us to do here that we put our money into, where I can take the time after the fact we get home and watch the movie again in the comfort of our own home. And I'm like, okay, you're 11 going on 30.
This is 11 going on 30.
This is a smart kid. Yeah, I will say. He understood. Hey, look, listen, Dad, we're spending like $1,500 a day here. What are we doing?
How old is Josh?
He's 11. He'll be 12.
Okay.
So yeah, so he kind of put it in a sense. He's like, no, he's like, this is literally what he told me. He was like, no, don't put the money towards Black Widow. Let's go into the Star Wars launch bay and buy me the crystals.
There you go.
That's what
Smart kid
wanted. So
well, what do you think, Vash? I think you might have a different opinion on this one. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
I do. Look, there are creators within the industry who specifically create their films for the platform by which it is going to be released in, right? Or released for, I should say. And look, this is why Christopher Nolan left, because it was so integral to him to have a theater experience. He left Warner Brothers, which is insane to me, because they've been together for so long. There are creatives who kind of envision that their films are going to be seen in that setting. And my argument is this. My argument, I think, accessibility, yes, I do agree with you. Conveniences will always win out. And that's one of the reasons why theaters are kind of pushing back. But I think for me personally, convenience, at least when it comes to like these big temples and stuff, I don't know. These films feel way more disposable now than they ever have. And I think that will show up in other avenues. I don't think it'll show up in the merch. I think it will show up in, the Blu-ray revenue and the kind of the pop culture kind of legacy it leaves in this way. I mean, look, I'll give you an example. Would Endgame have been as big a film culturally had it been released to date? Would it have made as much money?
Probably not as much money, but you know what's interesting though is that culturally, I'm not sure because we've seen some pretty culturally significant things go directly to TV.
I think it's two different things because I think you put Endgame in the year 2006, it needs a theatrical release, absolutely. Yeah. But now that we're in the social media age where we're reacting just like with these Disney Plus shows, that we're all in the confines of our own home, but we're all talking about the same exact thing at the same exact moment, whether that be at 12:45 when we're all wrapping up the episode or throughout that first weekend it's on Disney Plus. We're all talking about it. It's creating that conversation. So it really depends on the time where we're placing these movies.
Sure. I mean, I can get that, but I don't know. I don't think Disney would have released, even now, I don't think they would have released Endgame the way they are doing now with the end date. I think the box office, the revenue potential is severely reduced when you have it be this accessible and this convenient. Because we all know that people went there, they had to have gone there multiple times for that box office to be what it was at the end of the day, plus $2 billion or whatever.
Let me ask the three of you this, in your own opinion, in the theater side of it, not as far as the film studio, the theaters, could they potentially come to a point where they end up giving incentives to get people back into the theaters?
Oh, who's going to give incentive, the studio or the theater?
The theaters themselves.
I think they will. I think they will have to give some sort of incentive or lower their prices. Like I think that the candy thing, like the concession stuff, that's a huge complaint for a lot of moviegoers.
I've been getting emails. I've been getting emails from Cinemark. Cinemark is my local movie theater chain, and they've been doing these promotional offers. Come in on Tuesday, and you'll get a 75-cent hot dog. Come in this Tuesday, and you'll get a 75-cent popcorn. So they're starting to trickle in those little incentives to come back.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I also think too, to your point, George. I think we've had this discussion before, but I think big temples, big releases are if they do have a windowing practice, I think they'll be there. But in terms of smaller films, I think those might go by the wayside. And how does the budget for those films go when that happens? What happens to these smaller productions when really you're reserving these big temples for the theaters? And what happens to the amount of screens that you have, how much real estate you take up, and so forth? That calculation will change the industry dramatically. And I think that's what we're seeing now, and we're going to be seeing the effects of later.
And that's interesting, Dre, because that effectively turns the entire the theater chain industry into the El Capitan, not owned by specific, studios like that, but where, El Capitan probably only shows 6 movies a year.
Correct.
Or, so maybe that's the compromise. Maybe theaters exist with just kind of releasing big tentpole spectacle movies, but the romantic comedies, detective dramas, things like that just go to the respective platforms, No,
I think and if you look at the share, if you look at the percentages between like Jungle Cruise, Black Widow and stuff like that, between where if families did go out or groups did go out to see these films in theaters, what screens were they seeing them on? Disproportionately, they were seeing them on bigger screens. If they were going out for the theater experience, they wanted the theater experience or the best version of that they could possibly get their hands on. So you're seeing that already kind of take place within the industry right now. I think the other thing too, part of this is, and piracy plays a big issue in this. And that is one of the things that kind of sinks this. Well, two things I will say. One is piracy, where if you look at the Black Widow numbers or the Jungle Cruise numbers, if you go on certain sites maybe that have some statistics surrounding this, they're up. I mean, they're way up. I mean, like 4 or 5 times what they normally should be. I mean, that's the kind of distribution that's being played out here. So when maybe they do go to the theater like the first weekend, but maybe they don't subsequently, in that case. Also, too, we're seeing watch parties. We're seeing, hey, for $30, let's get George's family over here, OG's family over here. Let's do a watch party with the 10, 15 kids or whatever. And now maybe you were getting, per viewing per person. Now it's like per viewing, and it's a huge amount. Kind of what tanked boxing, but that's another story.
Well, next what's going to be is the Roku TVs are going to add on a feature where they have facial recognition of how many people are actually in front of them.
Oh, we're getting there.
Don't say that, George. Don't put that energy out in the air.
Well, and this kind of reminds me a lot of the music industry years ago when iTunes and Napster and all that was coming about. Kind of the same situation. I mean, it was easy then to just kind of burn a CD for yourself. You don't have to go buy it. And I think that the movie industry is sort of feeling that, same problem now. They're facing that same problem now.
But that doesn't happen if you have a windowing practice. That if you keep it in the theater for like 30 days or 45 days, maybe that burnt disc of whatever might be on that, maybe that doesn't happen so fast. That's kind of been my argument. And look, listen, I got the setups to set up here. I got a 77-inch OLED screen. I got the 5.1, 5.22 subwoofers. I can have a great theater experience. We're also going to be investing in probably a popcorn machine, but I can have a great theater experience, right? But to me, seeing it with an audience, seeing a film like laughing beside other people, that gasp that in like Last Jedi when that Holdo maneuver goes in, she rams that hyperspace in, and she just goes right through the whole fleet. The gasp from the audience, I'll never forget that. Or kind of the tears coming up in people's eyes when ScarJo does jump off the cliff and sacrifice herself, that kind of thing. That energy of like, Captain America getting the hammer for the first time, that's lost, so I don't know. Call me romanticist or something. I don't know.
I'll have my rebuttal about this. This is my rebuttal and my closing thoughts.
Okay.
I've been going to the movie theater since God knows when. I went to the drive-in. That's how I'm showing my age for Little Mermaid. And for Turner and Hooch. So like going to the movie theater, going to that United Artists on Balboa or going to the Man Granada Hills, that was me going to go watch those movies. And then gradually my parents let me go by myself. I got to go see Tomb Raider with Angelina Jolie by myself. And then that started my whole trend of going to the movies and then like tagging my friends along, being like, hey, bring your friends, let's all go watch this movie. Like going like, this is full circle, going to watch the very first Fast and Furious movie and just feeling the crowd's energy from watching that movie, seeing kids who didn't have tickets sit on the stairs of that theater and just like, it was the very first showing and reacting to everything. And soon on then, we got to go to coming of age when I was 18, 19, going to midnight screenings, whether it be for a Marvel movie, Cloverfield, any Harry Potter movie. We were there, midnight screening, and then those gradually started to become 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock showings. We were always on those advanced ticket websites, clicking, trying to make sure we had our tickets for those screenings. When it came down to the quarantine and when we were allowed to go watch a movie, I was first in line to go watch Tenet. I was so anticipating Tenet because it's Christopher Nolan, one of my favorite filmmakers.
Absolutely.
Loved everything that he'd done in the past, had to go watch this film. The time that it came out, Orange County was the only area that was allowed to play movie theaters or have movie theaters still operating. So when I went, it was a scaled down version of what a movie theater experience would be like. Very few employees on staff. There was very few showings. I was lucky to get into a screening where there was only probably about 8 other people in the IMAX screen with me. Because you got to go watch a Christopher Nolan movie in IMAX. You don't do it on a regular screen.
That's very true. Very true.
Yeah. So that was August or September of 2020. Movie theater shut down. I'm renting these movies. I bought Mulan. I pretty much bought every Disney Plus Premier Access film, starting from Mulan, Raya, Cruella, everything that's come out. Come back to June 2021. Fast 9 is about to be released. I grabbed my ticket. I'm like, I got to be there. This is the movie event. This is going to be the movie that brings back the moviegoer. Just because it's popcorn, tentpole, everything that you want in a summer blockbuster. I get to the theater and I felt very uncomfortable. I just was not in the element that I needed to be in. It was a sold out theater, and at a moment, about halfway through, I had to leave the theater just to catch a breath. Just because maybe it was some anxiety kicking up.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just the way I was feeling that day. I just did not feel comfortable in that movie theater. I luckily found a seat towards the back where there was not that many people, and I watched the rest of the film from afar. That way I knew that I wasn't deep into that crowd. Mind you, we're recording this in the midst of the Delta variant. So I'm not making any sort of urgency to get back to that realm, or there's no movie right now that I really, really need to go see in that sort of space. Mind you, I love the movies. I will always love movies, but right now, the convenience of paying day and date, $30, my limit is $40. $40 is my limit. That is where I'll say that's where I need to be. But right now, I will take day and date over everything.
Yeah, and I'll be completely honest. Like, full disclosure, I've actually always loved watching stuff from home. So I am biased on it. Like, I definitely do prefer in the home experience.
Yeah.
I always have.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am biased. But I do think, though, in all fairness, I do think that there is a place still for movie theaters. I mean, I think that, I think what we talked about, Vash, a moment ago, where you can have the theaters, but maybe just have like the big tent poles, have like a 30-day window.
Yeah.
There's compromises here. And I think the industry is going to have to come to some sort of compromise. I do think, though, no matter what happens, I do think the theater going experience the market share for that will be much smaller going forward.
Yeah.
Not eliminated, but
well, I mean, if they don't have any windowing practices, oh yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Well, what happened with Fast 9 is that I went to go watch that June 25th, not knowing that it was going to be rent for $20 a month later. They must have snuck that in without anybody knowing. It's on iTunes right now for $20. If I would have known that, I would have paid the $20 to do that.
Yeah, that's probably why they didn't say anything. But if you look at AMC's negotiation with Comcast Universal, that was something that was preordained.
Yeah.
Look, I know I'm going to be seeing Top Gun Maverick in theaters. Like I it's like one of those things. Like that one I'm going to see in theaters.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you. Like there are some movies that are just not worth seeing.
No.
And they're just not worth paying the price. They're just not worth going out there. Hopefully that means better films.
Yeah,
if
this
nothing
can only
else.
elevate that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And look, I agree. Like, I think we had this discussion online, like some of the bloat attached to films and how expensive they are to make. Can we cut some of this? Yeah, I think we can. Now, hey, if you're going to do it right. But but if I think we can reduce costs. I think there is a place for theaters going forward, and even if that's smaller, multiplexes without as many screens, so forth. Mm-hmm. And hey, if we can get better films out of all of it, I'm game.
Now, do you guys think, real quick before we close it out today, do you guys think that, like, I understand during the whole pandy that like that we had to do the day and date thing, right? That the studios were all kind of on board with this day and date thing because of the pandy. But do you think having a year plus of doing that day and date, grooming and conditioning people to expect that, it's going to be hard to put that genie and untie that knot?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Because people are so conditioned now. How are they going to just turn it back on like this and be like, oh, well, now you're going to have to wait 35 days.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough sell, I think, for a lot of people, you know?
We're creatures of habit. We tend to kind of adapt to new things without even thinking that we are. You know, it's like you give someone, it's like the transition between a regular flip phone to a smartphone. Does anyone really know the first day of when that was transitioned? But we just automatically just rolled right into it, and we just started using it in our day-to-day. So I actually agree with that. When you add something and you're so used to that, but then when you get it taken back, and it's like, wait, what am I supposed to do? And we're all standing there with our hands in our pockets.
It's going to be really tough, I think, you know.
Well, look, they were pushing back films. At a certain point, you know, does it become a point where, you know, we have a streaming service? Like, my personal feeling on it, they use the events of the world going on to kind of further leverage their streaming services and stuff like that. That's kind of, you know, what we're seeing right now. And it's like, oh, well, if he's doing it, we got to do it, you know, that kind of thing. I don't like how that whole kind of thing played out, but look, I do agree with you. I think there's going to be some expectation that it's like, wait a minute, this is out in theaters, and I can't download it at home.
But
I think that is coming.
It also makes you think too of how these studios have an outlook on this, because from the time of the shutdown to everything reopening, there was a window when things sort of kind of went back to normal, and even with that. Yeah. Little bit of time, I still don't think that they saw the theater industry
return.
Boom, exactly. So I think in a company's mind, they're thinking, okay, well, if it's not showing no progress, we have to still keep moving forward with what's working. And I think with these streaming services, that's what the folks are going for.
That's the tough thing, because I think they needed to commit to it. And I think that's what we were seeing. We were seeing elevating box offices with Fast 9, Godzilla vs. King Kong, Black Widow. Like, it was going up. It's just events taking over, you know?
I'll use one example. This is almost an average, not average answer. There's somebody that I follow. His name is Greg Miller, Game Over Greg. He hosts a channel called Kind of Funny. And they do in review for pretty much every big tentpole movie. And he's in the boat of he's having a pandy baby. So his wife is about to give birth very, very soon. And so he has to adapt to that change of him not being able to go to his local Cineplex because he's got to care to his wife and pretty soon care to his child. So when all these Premiere Access and HBO Max day to date, he's loving it. And there's other co-hosts that are like, I love this as well. Just on his back, like, hey, like if we can get these Premiere Access movies for these new parents who would usually go to the movies, like this generation during this quarantine, there's a huge baby boom that like nobody's really talking about as far as these parents not being able to go take their kids to the movie or themselves not being able to go take these kids or themselves to the movie because they got to take care of their kids or their wives. So,
and especially during the initial shutdown, because I mean that baby boom was like off and running, and it's like, was that really a surprise? There's nothing else to do, so might as well.
Wait.
Life finds a way.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, that's an interesting point. And also even like the old cats. Like I'm older, and like, but I'm too young to have seen the original Star Wars movies in theaters. Mm-hmm. So my nostalgia for that franchise really came from VHS. From watching it at home on the VHS or that's where my love for Star Wars began. It wasn't in the theater, So that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? Make a good point. It did start out in kind of home media, special edition, all that kind of stuff. But man, it on the same track, on Star Wars. I still remember staying outside for the prequels and lining up with everybody else, and I don't know.
What was the first films you guys ever saw in theaters? Like, what was the very first film that you saw?
I don't remember my very first film. The earliest film that I can remember seeing in theaters was actually a re-release of The Jungle Book. And that was sometime in the 80s. I don't remember exactly, but I was young.
Same. I was, like I told you guys, drive-in. I don't really remember it, but Little Mermaid and Turner and Hooch.
Nice.
But the first, in theater was a re-release of Pinocchio in the theater.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
Lion King, Capri.
Nice.
What it was the biggest theater in Arizona at that time, and I remember those gold curtains and this is gonna be kind of cool, and man, it was a hit. That's pretty big. So
I saw that at the El Capitan, the very first showing.
Oh, that's cool.
It was a moment. Yeah, it was the
awesome.
last day of school. My grandma had said, "We're taking you out early," and I didn't know what it was. It was like, we're going to the El Capitan. They had this huge production, just like how they do now with the lasers and the lights. They had that back then, the Piano Man, and then just hearing the first song from Lion King. Oh God.
Real quick, and then we got to close it out because it's almost 2 hours now.
Yeah.
But I will. But I do have to say, nothing, in my opinion, will ever beat that Renaissance era of Disney animation. I mean, that was such a spectacular era.
So good.
That the stars were aligned perfectly.
Yeah.
During that era. That was
absolutely.
You can't touch it.
You can't touch it.
We got to have shows on it. We got to go through the eras.
We will.
I think we should.
We will definitely. We got to. But thank you, fellas, so much for coming on today. We covered a lot today. We have a lot of material today. The ScarJo thing, Kareem Daniels, day and date. There's a lot that we discussed. Those of you watching at home, comment below. What are your opinions on all of what we discussed today? We definitely want to hear from you. The last time we did a collabo, we got some really, really good comments. So keep that up. Keep commenting. We'd love to hear from you. I'm going to go down the row, down our panel, and we're going to close this out. George D. Family Man 23.
You had to think there for a second.
Wait a minute.
That's it. It's Disney Family Man 23. That's you can find me on YouTube under that name. Also on Twitter at Disney George, and also on Instagram, and as part of the Grand Circle Tour podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher.
Perfect. And Rudio, if you can close it out and let everyone know where they can find you at home, sir.
Sure. I want to thank everybody for actually sticking around. If you watch this 2-hour podcast, you're amazing.
Very much thumbs up for you.
Big thumbs up for you too. But yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram and TikTok at Rudio.
Perfect. And Mr. Vash Sky Dre.
Vash Sky. Oh, gotta get you in there, Rudio. Thank you. Best place to find me at Vash Sky on Twitter. I love the interaction. Just really, really cool stuff. I love getting to know you. And I do a show on Orange Go 55 called Freshly Squeezed, your source for juiciness and squeezed fresh right from the grove. It's awesome that's catching on. It's just one thing that I thought about.
But we have to put a disclaimer that when we do that, folks, we're not squishing Scarlett Johansson's career. It's
oh no.
ScarJo, just for a brief ScarJo, if you happen to watch this, please don't sue me for that.
Please. I loved We Bought a Zoo. We Bought a Zoo, great film.
You know what's gonna happen? She's gonna put you in a headlock and
she's got everything that I need.
Rule number 1, never take your eye off your opponent.
That's what happens if you get on the bad side of ScarJo. So yeah, that hopefully that doesn't actually happen. Hopefully we kind of keep our necks on. But But please, everybody, please comment below. Let us know what you think about all these topics. I mean, there was a huge range here. If you know anything about these lawsuits, anything about the inside information about Bob Iger, Chapek, let us know, please.
Yes.
Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. I mean, if you haven't subscribed by now, I mean, what are you doing? Ring the bell for notifications and take us away, Orange Grove.
Yes. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll be back with more videos. We got a lot of video ideas percolating behind the scenes, and we're going to definitely come back for more, and a lot of good stuff coming up. And I want to thank my panel again, Disney Fan Man 23, Rudio, Vast Guy. Thank you all. I love you guys. Thank you so much for coming on again, and thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.